Right. Well, that just shows not to get too overconfident with these things. So there are two ways in which you can watch this to residents, either on the village Facebook page, where Kay is now monitoring this, and you can put any questions that you might have for the open forum in the comments there, and I'll ask Kay for those in a moment if there are any. You may have sent some questions through to Steve, the clerk, but he hasn't received any this time. And you can also watch it on YouTube on, it's got to be one of our channels, and it's mine, it's Philip Ailes. If you look up that YouTube channel, you can see that. So that said and done, we'll start the open forum. John, can you possibly move into shot? There's a lovely picture.
Oh, sorry.
Of your on your wall, but
yep.
Kay, have we got any questions in the comments there?
Not yet. Got 9 viewers.
Very good. I was expecting Martin Hatton actually, because he did actually join as a test earlier on and said he would come back in at this stage. But okay. Well, if we haven't, shall we move on to the actual parish council meeting in that case? Mm-hmm. We have got apologies from Darren for the very best of reasons that he's just had a little baby girl.
Oh, brilliant.
And, he's
congratulations.
Juggle the two of them. I had suggested that he might bring a small honorary councillor along to the meeting this evening, but he thought that was perhaps a bridge too far.
If he's looking in, all the best.
Yeah, we certainly, I think, offer our best wishes to Darren and his wife from
indeed
us here, and also from Ian Markham on for reason of illness. So I think that's all of us, isn't it? Yes, that's all 7 of us.
Yep.
So we now need to move on to agreeing the minutes of the
declaration of interest.
Oh, sorry, declarations of interest. Yeah. Are there any declarations of interest by councillors in? Yeah, Russell.
I've got a payment in the payment schedule.
Okay. Any others? Let's move on to the minutes of the meeting of the 3rd of August. Does anyone have any questions, or can we agree that as a true record?
Agree.
Okay. In that case, can I have a proposer, please?
Yep.
That's Russell, and a seconder, which is John, and all in favour. Yeah. Such unanimous. Thank you. So let's move on to the clerk's report. I'm going to try and do a screen share on this one so that we can actually talk our way through it. Okay. Let me just close that. Right. Just about to start here as well. Right. Can you all hear me now?
Yeah.
Yep.
So are there any, item 1, I have spoken to Luke Stacey. It's obviously a very busy time of year with them getting in the harvest at the moment. But he suggested that I give him a call next week, and he may have some idea about how he's getting on and whether he'll be able to meet me to talk about cutting these trees back. So that's ongoing. Trees for the sports ground. Steve, are you now making arrangements to get those planted?
I will do, but I mean, I think there's still a bit of, I was tending to leave it to the second half of September.
Indeed, yes, yeah.
But by the way, I did talk to Colin, didn't I? And he knows what's going on.
Oh, right, okay, Colin Brown, yeah. The defibrillators, I believe that Darren has said that he's going to arrange to meet with you, Steve, later in this week to just give you an update.
That's right, yeah.
We've got the payment of the S106 monies, which means, I think, Steve, that we've now got all the outstanding S106 monies from Maltings 1.
Sorry, Phil, do you know more than I do? Because I thought it's in Paul Van Geet's in-tray.
Well,
I've not seen it land in our bank account.
no, it may not be in our bank account, but it's been cleared for payment into our bank account by the
Correct.
Infrastructure Board. And I was just asking you, I think that's all the monies that we are owed directly from outstanding S106, isn't it?
We have a little bit of, I think, leisure left.
Okay. Could you perhaps look at how much that is? Because I think we've only got 2 years in which to spend that. So, or it has to go back. So we need to make sure that's put to good use.
Yep.
Do I understand that Milton Keynes have now said that they'll replace the public footpath signs?
Yes.
That's very good.
It's just a matter of, well, they did when I talked to them about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and then other things kind of overtook it. So, but I've got pictures, and I've got a mapping course on Wednesday, and I'll use that to actually map the locations and footpath and send it to them. But they did say they'd do it.
Yeah. And the other point I just pick out from the Clerk's report is the grant application for £10,000 to cover the loss of income at the village hall due to COVID-19, where we've had to have it, shut, has been, well, it's more than verbally agreed, isn't it? You've had it actually in writing. I suppose verbally can include writing as well as speaking.
Well, I've had an email, but I've had no official communication, nothing that's anything other than a textual email.
Yeah.
So I have had notice, but I haven't had, if you like, the official paperwork with any conditions that might be applied to it. I don't know if there are any conditions.
Yeah. Well, that is very good, and I think thanks of the council to you, Steve, for picking up on that as soon as the notice came out and getting the application in.
Yeah, well done, Steve.
Well, it was crazily easy. I didn't even need to make a case. I tried to make a case, and they wouldn't let me.
Yeah.
They just said you've got it.
Right. George, I just have to stop the screen share for a moment because George Bowyer needs to be let in. Martin, I'm afraid we have actually completed the open forum, but I may suspend this if you wanted to say something in just a moment, just so that you can speak. But and then you do need to move to either Facebook or YouTube, but I'll come back to you in a moment. We're just looking at the Clerk's report at the moment, George. And I was actually screen sharing. Right, so on the rest of this, has anyone got any questions on the matters in the first part of the Clerk's report?
On paragraph 18, the village hall booking clerk resigning, I'd just like to say a very big thank you to Sarah for all the hard work that she's done during her time as the booking clerk.
Yeah.
And also to anybody who's watching in the village, if you know anybody who would like to take over as booking clerk, we'll need to have somebody pretty soon.
Mm.
That's very good. And I think, yes, I'd like to echo my thanks as well, as I'm sure the whole council will, because
Us too, yeah.
it's a really important position, and doing it as a volunteer, it makes an important contribution to the village. So thank you, Sarah, very much. And if you could record that, actually, Steve, in the minutes of the meeting.
I've done, Phil.
Thank you.
Good.
Going on to the
Phil, sorry, one other thing about the village hall. Pilates has been a bit postponed, but yoga wants to start fairly soon. We have had our first post-COVID booking as well, which was a choreography practice on Saturday.
That's very good.
Pilates, not the yoga, isn't it?
well, whichever. I mean, it's restarting. Moving into the outstanding actions. You can close the first one, Steve, because as you'll come on to in my report, the flooding in Bullington End Road has been sorted out. At least we hope it has for the time being. And I have actually received a map of Castlethorpe, a huge one, for the rural nameplates. Is there anything, John,
Yes.
on the Sustrans track? Because we noticed that there was something else that was getting funding for cycling. And I know Steve wrote to you and Darren and asked if there was any progress on getting the Sustrans track improved.
I don't know if Darren's had success. I have not. It's very difficult to get hold of people in the council at the moment, Chair.
Yeah.
Either on holidays or absent through COVID or what have you. So there's been no further action on that now, but I hope at the next meeting there will be.
Okay. And on item 7, registering the play area, given the fallen tree, I wonder, Steve, if we should reconsider that. I don't know whether we need a resolution at perhaps the next meeting just to think about that. But to be clear, you know, Milton Keynes have regard themselves as having responsibility for that, and therefore did take on the, I'm sure, significant cost of removing the tree that was that came down there.
I'm quite happy to record that in the notes and close the action, Phil.
Yeah, is everyone comfortable with that?
Yeah, Chair. I think John's going to say the same thing. They haven't actually removed the tree. What they've actually cut up the tree that has fallen down, and they've left the wood there. But presumably, if anybody wants it, they can come and get it. But the tree itself hasn't been removed.
Okay, I was going to come back up in on this in other business, because I've had another request from a resident, correspondence rather, because a resident's written about that. Perhaps we can do that then, Dave, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, sorry, John.
Yeah.
No.
Anything else on the clerk's report?
I agree with what David has said. I just want to give you an extra bit of information on that, Chair, and that is that the council are appointing 2 new tree observers to go around the whole borough and check on all the states of all the trees. If we concentrate on the play area for a moment, in the fish ponds area, there are a couple of trees that look to be in a similar position. What he has guided is that they'll come and look at them and inspect them, and if they're not up to standard, they will take them down. But he's also advised that because of the dry weather, if the tree looks distressed, they're moved to leave it a year to see if it can recover, as they often do. But other than that, really, they seem to be on the case, the council, that is.
Okay, all right. Well, as I say, I'd like to come back to it at the end. So,
Of course.
Is everyone finished with the clerk's report now?
Mm-hmm.
All right. If I move on to my report, because there's quite a lot happened in August. Waste collection in Maltings Field was a big issue, and I did spend some time liaising with both the head of waste management operations and our PCSO. And really the long and the short of this is that I think we've just got to ask residents to move their vehicles on Friday mornings until after the collection. There simply isn't, I've heard people say, well, put yellow lines down, but there simply isn't space for the residents to park their vehicles. I mean, it's just very, very tight. I mean, the PCSO, Josh, he said that when he went down to talk to residents, he actually couldn't find anywhere to park himself. It was so tight. That is the only thing that I can think of for the moment, unless anyone has got any other ideas. There was a suggestion, for example, that additional parking spaces might be built on that green verge, just to the left of the entrance to Maltings Field. But I'm not sure the residents who currently look out onto that would be very happy with it being replaced with parking bays. And to be honest, I'm not at all confident that they just wouldn't get used up and would still be in the same position. I don't know if anyone else would like to talk about it. I think it's just an ongoing problem that we'll just have to deal with, working with Milton Keynes Council.
Is there an action there, Phil?
No, unless anyone else wants to speak. I think we just got to ask and continually do it. You know, if there's a problem, just say, please, will residents move their vehicles? And if it's not moved on, if they can't collect on the Friday, then they will come back typically on the Monday or the Tuesday.
Chair?
All right. John.
Chair, on your bullet point 4, where you speak of Keith Wilson and they'll be able to come out within 48 hours, excluding weekends, so rubbish will be collected until the Tuesday, and happened at our last meeting. I came across an issue I hadn't realised occurred. When the contractors go back to base, they report whether they've missed anything or not. So if they have missed something and say that the collection has been completed, there is no further action. So in this case, it was bottles that were left, and I rang and she told me that actually the refuse men had said the whole round was done, and it wasn't. So I just to say, if they're not by Tuesday, a telephone call needs to be made.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think if it's just one set of rubbish, then it probably has just been overlooked in some way,
Sure.
and it needs to be reported as a miscollection.
Yeah.
If it's the whole street, then you know they need to come back, and they will come back. Thank you. Speeding. I had, I think, 3 residents in North Street quite separately wrote to me about speeding, especially of green waste lorries. There will be a speed check being done by the local specials. The speed gun was, funnily enough, when I wrote to him, he said it's just off being calibrated, but we'll be back soon, and we're on their list. And I've also written to Kevin Wilson to ask him to remind the Serco drivers of the new 20-mile-an-hour zone, and he's confirmed he will do so. Rather seriously, I've had several complaints of antisocial behaviour on Fox Covert Paddock Close by youth congregating, causing noise, litter, including nitrous oxide canisters, and of course, not following the COVID rules. This has been reported to the police, and our PCSO has been round and has spoken to some of the residents. I had hoped that Josh would be able to come today, but he had a meeting conflict. I think, having talked to him at some length on this, the best solution is to ask any residents, if they feel they can do so safely, to photograph what's going on, in particular car number plates, and then the police will follow it up. You know, Josh has talked about the parish council purchasing a camera, but I'm really not sure where we would put it, because I'm not sure that they congregate in exactly the same place. And of course, then you've got problems of the camera being vandalised. But I just wanted councillors to be aware of this problem. There's quite a lot in highways. I don't need to go through that. We'll come back to item 4 on the main agenda. And rural nameplates. I've received a map from MKC. It's A0, which is absolutely humongous size. I could show. Well, I won't break the meeting to show you, but it's huge. But it's got every house in the village. Drains. Now this is an important one, and I know George has been taking some actions on this as well. But Carl Devereux, who's I think he was clerk of works rather than is. I think he's moved into a slightly different role. But I've been liaising with him for about the past year following water ingress at the Chestnuts and garage, more recently garage flooding on Bullington End Road. And he was able to bring equipment to the village, and there's a full description there of where all the drains are, because he insisted on walking me through you know, exactly where they are and where the problems lay. But it looks as if he's jetted and sucked clean all the drains on North Street and where it runs through into South Street. And it poured with rain shortly afterwards, and I went out with my camera, and as far as I could see, the water was actually now draining away and not building up in the way in which we had problems before. A point for George really is that they've only got one gully cleaner for all 75,000 gullies in Milton Keynes. So it really means that if the grid roads have to be cleaned every 3 years, which is mandated, that the other gullies can only be cleaned about once every 5 years. And it might be worth ward councillors looking into. I know Milton Keynes has got a lot of financial problems at the moment, but when they can see their way through that, if a second gully cleaner with a root cutter, because a lot of the problems with these drains is that roots get into them, could actually be purchased. But and it particularly applies to rural parishes, by the way, because we've all got old drainage infrastructure. Anyway, so there's I'll share the joy with you all on the North Street drains. And finally, I just mentioned that rural broadband fibre to the premises. As far as I can see, we don't qualify for that, but if anyone else wants to have a look and see if they can see a different opportunity, please, I would welcome that. Any questions on my report?
I've got one, Phil.
Yeah.
The bit that I didn't see was the replacement when they're doing the LED light replacement, the potential to bring in new heritage style street lamps.
No, that's not in my report this time because nothing happened during the month of August on it. So it's still where it was in your report, Steve, and we will need to, I will chase that up. I need to go back anyway and chase up a couple of things.
Okay, Phil.
Right, I'll stop that share. Where do we go now? We now go on to...
Phil, can I just respond to your thing on the gully cleaners?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, you're right. There is only the one gully cleaning machine in Milton Keynes, but Carl has now got it fitted with a very comprehensive mapping system. All 75,000 gullies have been mapped, and when they go out and clean the things now, they it actually records how much stuff they take out of each gully, and so they're now working on an accurately measured system of how often these things need to be replaced or redrained. And Stoke Goldington managed to throw a spanner in the works by paying for its own gully cleaner to come out. And so when the Milton Keynes machine came out, all the gullies were empty. So they said, well, they don't need doing for 10 years then. So it's a good system. They are hoping to get another machine, but obviously with COVID, no one knows where the money's going to come from at the moment.
Thank you for that, George. Yeah. Yes, Carl expressed his displeasure about Stoke Goldington's little operation. Right. Now, I don't propose to deal with the planning session, which is the third 4.3 here, because we're going to come onto it in the agenda. Mm-hmm. So we're about to move into planning. There are no new planning applications. So before we move into section 6, I'll suspend the meeting in case Martin Hatton, who's joined the meeting, wanted to say anything, because I know he's concerned about 6.1, which is the Maltings 2 field. So Martin, if you would like to unmute yourself, and if you have a question or anything that you'd like to say at this point, please do so.
Yeah, good evening, gents. I assume you can all hear me loud and clear, but forgive me. It's my first time using Zoom, so I'm a bit of an amateur, I'm afraid, in this one. But I just wanted to sort of echo, just echo what the other residents of Paddock Close are saying to me, really, in that we just have concerns around the what was proposed originally, properties, the new properties being shared ownership, and then 30%, which we had a referendum on, and then Stonewater are asking now for 100% of social housing. Now that concerns all the residents of Paddock Close, and which is not good, and it concerns me as well. So just echoing that again, and I'm sure you're all very aware of that, and you're working on that as well anyway. But for me personally, I've always said to Philip that I accept that there's going to have to be some development in places, and that the area of the piece of land that's been sold to Stonewater is obviously it's ideal for that kind of development. But like I said, I've always said to Philip that we can't hold it back. But what I've always been quite concerned about or interested in is making sure that it's always a quality job and a nice job that's done in terms of the type of houses that are built and the architecture, and how those houses fit within the village, and how they take their inference from Paddock Close. And quite clearly, Stonewater have not taken much notice of that, and I doubt they generally have the budget to sort of support or build houses to the same kind of visual standard as Paddock Close. I don't know, but it's just it's the one area that really does concern me, is that the development needs to fit in nicely with Paddock Close and the rest of the village. And it's not something that I'd really want to see any compromises on, quite frankly. But my feeling is that Stonewater will expect Castlethorpe to in some way compromise on that. So yeah, that's all I've got to say on it at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Martin. Rather than asking you to sort of duck out now and come back on YouTube, because we're right on the item, I think I'm happy for you to stay there, but you must now remain muted as we restart the meeting. So I'm again going to share my screen. Let me just make sure I've got what I think right. It's a pity, Martin, that you can't see this, because it's actually got the document that we're writing to or proposing to write to the inspector. But anyway, let me move into sharing the screen. So first of all, you can see here that we received a notice from Milton Keynes Council that the appeal is starting. And as you can see on this page, that documents have got to go in by the 10th of September 2020. Now, I have to say, this really is just unbelievably appalling. Steve has been trying to get hold of the case officer, Jeremy Lee, who was first of all on leave, and then returned from leave. But I believe the case it's still the case, Steve, that you've not been able to get hold of him to find.
Sorry, I just had to answer the door and I've lost my glasses. I've not had time to try him today. I tried all day on Friday, Phil, but I've just not had time to try him today.
Okay, well, I mean, he's had messages left on his voicemail and emails. So anyway, so there we are. Now, we will try and do this, but we're going to have to get this out tomorrow. So unless we can, get something, a meeting with them tomorrow, we are going to be effectively on our own. I'll now move to showing you a revised document. Now, we looked at an early version of this back in March when we first were told about the appeal. And with Steve, I've tried tightening it up a little bit. And this is the document that I am proposing to the council, this council, that we send to the inspector, along with a version of the modified neighbourhood plan, which has got some revised wording in it. Now, you can see, first of all, there's a point there that I'm just raising about, I actually can't work out which application is being appealed, because they put in some original documents back in, I think, August of last year, which we all said were unsatisfactory. Some of you may remember that they sent us some revised drawings on the 29th of November, but they didn't, as far as I'm aware, send them to Milton Keynes Council, and they certainly weren't posted on the planning portal, and they weren't advised in the usual MK Weekly lists. And Steve and I basically felt that it's not proper to consider a planning matter if the papers for it aren't in the public domain. And that went on for 2 meetings. That was the meeting of December and January, February it must have been, because then suddenly on the 18th of February, we were told that they had appealed, and the documents went up, all dated the 18th of February. Now, you can't appeal something that you've only just put the papers in for. You've got to give the planning authority a chance. Well, he's got to have it statutory 60 days, I think it is, to determine a planning application. So I find it hard to understand what's happened here. I think there are 2 possibilities. One is that Stonewater sent the papers to the parish council, but forgot to send them to the Milton Keynes Council, in which case they've got a problem. The rather more serious thing that I worry about is that they did send them to Milton Keynes Council, and Milton Keynes Council didn't process them. But we did have a meeting with them in March, and that didn't appear to be the case. So there's definitely a problem here about what it is that's being appealed. But when you look at the appeal, I think we've got a small number of reasons why we would oppose this. The first is the design code, i.e. the style of the houses, and that's something to which you just heard Martin Hatton refer. But if you look at what's on your screens at the moment, you can see the quotes from the neighbourhood plan, and indeed the modified neighbourhood plan, where we added, even though we felt that it was clear enough as it was, we added a further sentence which was agreed by the examiner and by David Blandammer, which says, it has an Edwardian style reflecting the growth of Castlethorpe following the advent of the railway, including bay windows, sash windows, stone window lintels, and recessed front porches. And neither of their submissions does that. The original one certainly doesn't, nor does the revised ones. The next one is the next point that Martin has raised, which is about affordable housing. And it makes it, we make the point that firstly, the neighbourhood plan was explicit that there would be open market and affordable homes. So you can't, that by definition, you can't have 100% affordable if you're going to have open market homes, which the neighbourhood plan requires. Milton Keynes Council has had its own planning policy, HN2, which says the normal maximum for affordable housing is 50%, and that it's got to be a sustainability test above that if you want to go above that. And we would argue that given the facilities in the village, there really isn't, it really wouldn't be sustainable having 100% affordable. I mean, there's a limited bus service, there's very little social activity. I mean, a number of 1 and 2 special sorts, which I list in a little bit further down in 4.2, but it is limited, no pub. So, we do think this is a car village, unfortunately, or for most people.
Actually, Phil, would you mind if I just stop you? It's just something that occurred to me. It's not only the Sussex Trans cycle track is in poor condition, it's also unlit.
Yeah.
maybe that's worth adding. I don't know what people
Okay.
think.
Yeah, I'm happy to look at that. Now I just got to. I need to make notes on this as we go. So, cycle track unlit, right? And then the final bit is about the S106 agreement, which, you know, they didn't actually disagree with the original submission. They said it when they came and spoke to us, but they didn't actually submit a viability statement or anything saying they couldn't do it. But again, the neighbourhood plan was quite explicit in designating this, that there would have to be some S106 payments. I think it's pretty cynical of them actually to just sort of say, well, we're a social housing provider and we don't need to pay this. So those are the main arguments. And then there's a little bit at the end, which is just correcting various statements that they've made in their appeal statement, where they've just basically got things wrong, really, to be honest. I'm just scrolling this down for you. And in the light of the reasons given above, the inspectors respectfully requested to refuse this appeal. So can I ask, I'll stop the share and I'll ask if any councillors want to comment on any of this. Russell.
Yeah, it was mentioned in passing that one of the things in the neighbourhood plan is the need for downsizer homes. And by definition, a downsizer home is somebody selling a house and moving into a smaller one. And by definition, that makes them ineligible for affordable housing or social housing.
Yeah, no, you're quite right. And actually it is in here, somewhere in here. It does say that about downsizers. I didn't read the whole thing, Russell, but it is in there.
I've got a problem that I can use Zoom, but I can't actually download anything because the broadband here is so slow.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah. I mean, I can share. Does anyone else wish to speak on this? Okay.
Actually, Phil, would you mind before you take a vote on it? I'd just like to advise the public that the councillors have had time to consider this. This isn't something that they've seen for the first time now. So this draft report was circulated to the councillors in good time for them to be able to review it. So this vote is not taken at the spur of the moment. This vote is based on considered reading.
Yeah, and indeed, the substance of what we're proposing was considered at an earlier meeting, I think the March meeting.
Sure.
So we have been through this. On that basis, and then perhaps making the point that the cycle track is unlit, which I can add in. Can I ask if, well, shall I then move to a vote? I'll propose. Oh, John wants to propose it.
No. I just want to make the point that 4.1 covers the aspect of downsizing that Russell was raising, which
Yes,
you can't see.
Yeah.
But it's fully covered in your report. So, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Can I move then to a vote? I'll propose that we submit this to the planning inspector together with an interim neighbourhood plan, which contains the revised wording. It's actually in section 4.2.3 of the neighbourhood plan, which covers the Edwardian style that I read out earlier. Can I now ask for all in favour to show your hands? That's 1, 2, 3. That's unanimous then. Thank you very much. Right. So we now move on to, I'm just going through here. 6.3 is about the siting of static holiday caravans at Cosgrove Park. And just to say that I have been told that those caravans are going to be they're homes really, static homes. They're going to be side-by-side homes, and they're going to be delivered in through Cosgrove, not down Foxcovert Lane. Apparently the park was unable to reach a financial agreement with the owner of the land that they had to cross. So they're going through Cosgrove. And 6.5, as I notified you all, the application for a 4-pitch gypsy traveller site up at Yardley Gobian was refused by South Northants Development Control Meeting. So I'll now move on to resolutions and 7.1. So if I can, again, very briefly screen share again, you will have seen that Andrew Ashcroft, who was the examiner of our neighbourhood plan, has now completed his report. And apart from one really, really important thing, I'm just going to flip through to the end here. He's supportive of it. But the one really important thing, I really want to show you this. Is that he did not feel that Gobbies Field met the conditions of MPPF paragraph 100, that's National Planning Policy Framework for residents who are listening, which is the top level national planning guidance. And he did not, and it's got 3 conditions for designating a local green space, and he felt that it didn't meet 2 of them. The main one was that he felt it was not demonstrably special. Right, here we are. He's suggested, or he's asked, advised Milton Keynes Council that they should delete the designation of Gobbies Field as a local green space from the neighbourhood plan. Now, interestingly, and unlike the previous neighbourhood plan, he actually says that if that is done, the plan can be made as planning policy by Milton Keynes Council without a referendum. But as you can see in 7.63, in the event that Milton Keynes does not accept the recommended modification in respect of the deletion of Gobbies Field and its proposed designation as an LGS, then the plan should proceed to referendum. So he's kind of giving an option there. Now, and that's, I would have thought, quite unusual. And I think those of us that have worked on this, and I would just stress to everybody, the steering committee consists of Russell, Steve, Leo Dunwoody, who's particularly focused on the Gobbies aspect, and me. And we felt that the examiner had given more weight to a walk round on one day in July, the 24th of July, where he observed people crossing the field. It was, I think, a blisteringly hot day because people were down in the swimming in the Tove. And there weren't ball games and so on going on in the whole field. And he gave more weight to that one visit than to 20 days of video recordings, which we had access to and had analysed, showing whole use of the field, or use of the whole field, you know, by groups of people playing ball, flying kites, doing all that sort of thing. And we felt that's wrong. Now, I'm now just going to go, yeah. So on that basis, the steering group would like to recommend that we request Milton Keynes Council not to delete Gobbies' designation as an LGS from the plan, and the plan would then have to proceed to referendum. Now, just to be clear, referendums and all elections have been postponed under the COVID regulations until May of next year. But for plans which have been examined, they are given additional weight. So, for example, the clause that was added that we've just discussed for Maltings 2 would be given additional weight, even though I happen to think the original plan was perfectly clear. I think it was, I think Stonewater were being disingenuous. So I'm now going to show you the document, which again you will have all had, which talks about the reasons why we believe that the examiner has not given appropriate weight to a number of aspects in here, but basically the demonstrably special to the local community. And there are some criteria there that he has to assess against. Beauty, historical significance, tranquility and richness of wildlife. But the most important one is recreational value. That's the one that we don't think he gave appropriate weight to. So just looking at this, and then there's also another one that he felt it didn't meet, but the original examiner, Mr. Biggers, did feel it met. So I mean, there's some confusion there, but he felt it was local, wasn't local in scale, and you're not allowed to designate an extensive tract of land. It's actually what we've asked for is 4.3 hectares. But I mean, for example, Castlefield is a local green space, and that's 4.7 hectares. So it's actually, you know, Gobbies is smaller than Castlefield, or the bit that we're asking to be designated of Gobbies. So we felt that is wrong. And so this is the, we also think he made some errors in law that Leo has picked up, which are covered in this appendix that Leo basically has suggested we write. He really didn't assess beauty and tranquility properly. So we're going to ask, I'm proposing to the parish council that we ask Milton Keynes Council to not to delete the LGS designation of Gobbies and therefore go to referendum. Now, we had a reply from our consultant, Neil Homer, today. I'll put this up, and you can see here that he feels that we should go down this route. He's given the reasons why we're entitled, and more to the point, Milton Keynes is entitled to come to a different answer than the examiner. And he actually makes the point that it may be that the examiner just didn't want to get into a judicial review with the landowner if he did designate it. But there we go. So I will stop the share now, and I would ask you if you've got any comments on that document, which you should have all had today. Okay. Now, George, I think we will need help from the ward councillors on this. Milton Keynes Council will have already said that it would take strong reasons for them not to accept an examiner's opinion on this. We think we've laid out the reasons very clearly in there. There is another reason which I don't think we'll put in writing, but I mean, there's no reason why we shouldn't say it. There has been a lot of activity on that field over the last few months, with surveyors measuring for drains and all sorts of things like that. At the moment, we're absolutely protected by both the neighbourhood plan and by the Milton Keynes local plan, Plan MK. But at the moment, there's a chink in the armour, as happened up at Hanslope. You know, this looks like a developer who would like to step in. We want to protect it as a recreational space for the village, but you know, and stopping development is not a reason for designating LGS, but I would point out that it's going to be a lot easier for Milton Keynes Council to defend, as Neil Homer has pointed out in his note, to defend designating as an LGS than to fight an appeal against the landowner if he puts in for development. So, you know, that's basically what we would want some help with. And I'm going to send this off and ask for a Teams meeting with David Blandammer and possibly John Palmer to go through this, and I'd like you to join us, George, if you could.
Yeah, you'll certainly get my support, Phil. Andrew, I think, will probably support, but he might be slightly impacted with his mayoral hat on. But that won't stop him signing something, and I'm fairly sure Bill will feel the same.
Yeah, I would also say, just for everybody's information, that both Neil Homer has always said that, in his opinion, the Gobbies Field is of a character that would allow designation as an LGS, and the original officer who was tasked to help us, Diane Webber at Milton Keynes Council, also gave that same opinion, because we said to them right at the outset, don't let us go down this route and waste everybody's time if this isn't a suitable field for LGS. And they both said no, it in their professional opinions, it qualified. Okay, well, we'll send that in then.
Hold on, Phil, you haven't asked for a vote on it.
All right, in that case, may I ask for a vote that we submit this to Milton Keynes Council? And all in favour? Yes, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. So I'm sorry, Steve, it was the lack of any adverse comment that rather took me out there. Right, moving on then to 7.2. Whoops. Oh, I see. Looks as if I've accidentally deleted the picture of the windbreak. But I think you've all seen a picture of the windbreak up at the tennis courts that's being proposed. Does anyone wish to speak on that? Russell, as chair of the sports committee, are you comfortable with it?
Yeah, I'm happy with it.
All right. In that case, we'll just move straight to a vote then. All those in favour of allowing it? Okay, John, yeah, yep. Unanimous. Very good. The next one, 7.3, is a resolution just to do what's called a hay cut of the wildlife area, just to top it all off and clear the grass away, and perhaps put some red poppy seeds down in there. Steve, do we have a rough order of cost?
Yes, we do. I mean, it's not a competitive bid, so I've kept it out of part 2. I don't see the need for it to be in part 2. We've had a quote of £90 to actually cut it, which is better than the £150 we paid last year. Although last year he did skim round the trees, etc. But 90 to 150, and then to clear it, £250. And last year we paid 461 to both clear the cuttings and also remove the mound of grass that we had there. So I'd say that's pretty comparable as well. So I'll be suggesting to the next parish council meeting that you might like to add that to the overall landscape contract. But I'd recommend that on this occasion, it's a little bit better, I would say, than what we paid last year. So if you want me to engage RTM to do the work, I'll do so.
Yeah. I mean, I should say that Sharon Clegg, who's really masterminded the revival of the wildlife area and the paths, and by the way, she submitted a little plan of where the paths should be maintained. You know, this is her recommendation, that the cut is done. Is it to 75 millimeters or something?
Some form of measurement.
Talking about it to the nearest millimeter, but you know, roughly that sort of height of cut and cleared away to give a chance for the wildflowers to grow through. And the red poppy seeds, I think we've talked about this before, and it's a relatively trivial amount of money, isn't it?
I can do the red poppy seed on my local approval. But really the point I think I'm making is that if this is something that you want to do on a year-by-year basis, then we really should roll it into the maintenance contract, and then we can actually get it approved by virtue of approving the budget in future years.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If you bring that forward, but for this time, I'll propose that we do this. All in favour? Right, thank you. Yeah, because it's got to be done in September, basically. So, yeah. Right, very good. 7.4 is then is for you, Dave, if you wanted to lead on it, but it's the inspections of the playgrounds in Thrupp Close and fish ponds. Are you able to speak?
You're on a roll.
Yeah, all right. Steve,
take it?
Yes, please do, Steve.
Okay. Well, effectively, we've got the new play equipment and gym equipment, and we took it with no maintenance contract. Now, in terms of let's have a look. The fish ponds play area, can't remember what they're called, and it's my photocopier has kind of blacked out their name. But,
hang on, I'll put this up for you.
RPM, Steve.
RPM, that's it, revs per minute. They've recommended 3 models. If we go for bi-monthly inspection, then it will cost £95 per inspection, being a total of £570 for the year. If we go for a quarterly inspection, then £110, £440 for the year, or a twice yearly inspection, 140, total 280. I would advise that if you want, again, it's not a competitive quote, so I'm not put it in part 2. But I would suggest to you that if we're going to have it inspected, that of course being the 4th option, that we don't have it inspected, then if we have the area inspected twice a year, we'll get a full report on the condition of equipment, not only that was provided by Proludic, but also the other ones. And we did actually walk around and have an unofficial look at some of the equipment. And it will give us the means to actually keep the equipment in good order. So I would recommend that either you opt for twice yearly operational inspections there for £280, or you opt not to inspect. I think
that's £280 for fish ponds plus £280 for Thrupp Close, isn't it?
Yeah, I was gonna come on to Thrupp separately, Dave, because
sorry, Steve.
Yeah, I think there's a slight difference. I think the equipment in fish ponds is kind of, if you like, more complex than that in Thrupp.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think I would ask the parish council to make separate decisions on both. You might well resolve to do the same thing for both, but give you the option of actually either or both.
Can I ask, can you say when you want these inspections to be? Because I'm guessing that during the summer, the equipment gets a lot more use than it would in the winter.
I'm sure we can, Kay.
John.
Chair, I support Steve's recommendation of the twice a year for the play area in the fish ponds. And I suspect that the perfect time to do it would be right at the start of summer and at the finish of summer.
I think it's quite clear, John, that we have faulty equipment there, so it would be good to do one immediately, and then maybe roll on 6 months from that, which would take us to spring next year, if we commission them immediately. So we'd have an inspection done September and an inspection in April probably, and that would also fit with Kay's supposition or probability that people are more likely to use it in summer.
Could I ask Steve, do Milton Keynes do any inspections at all of equipment?
Well, I did actually ask, and I'm terrible with names, but I did, the guy that does our returning officer, Phil Snell, that's it. I did actually leave a message on his voicemail, but he's not got back to me, and I've not had opportunity to talk to him. I think they do inspections, but for different purposes. I think if we want to take the onus, we really need out. We can't. I don't think we can expect anything from Milton Keynes Council.
And I mean, George, can you help us on this? Do you happen to know whether Milton Keynes Council? I mean, it's probably one of the things that's discussed in the budget process. Do you know what they're doing on play area inspections?
You're mute, George.
No, we're looking at the budget cuts that they're making at the moment. So we don't know where they're going to be. Alan Rankin, one of my colleagues, is going through their proposals. So can't tell you at the moment, I'm afraid. Okay.
We should also note that this is inspection only. So if they find a fault, we've also got to pay to have it maintained. But is the broad consensus that we should go for, as Steve suggests, say for twice a year? That seems to be what Kay and John were suggesting. Dave?
I'm surprised they haven't come up with a suggestion how much an inspection for once a year would be, to be honest.
That's a good point, Dave.
Because I think looking at something twice a year to me seems excessive, because if there was an obvious problem, we would spot it ourselves or it would be reported to us.
Yeah.
And like you say, on top of this isn't going to pay for any repairs. This is just for someone to come along and have a look, albeit experts, obviously. But I think twice a year is too much, personally. I think once a year.
At the beginning of the season.
And presumably that would bring the price down quite a lot as well. But
if I was a parish councillor, Dave, I think I'd agree with you. But I mean, it's obvious that they're putting the price per inspection up, proportionate to the number of times that we actually have the inspections done. So I'd expect if we had an inspection once a year, it would probably be 95, 110, 120, somewhere around £160. I would expect, because they're hiking the per inspection price up.
But for no reason of cost, actually. This is purely just a pricing strategy. John, did you want to comment?
Two things, Chair. Steve, myself and Dave did inspect the fish ponds area with the experts. And quite honestly, we were just picking up things that need doing and making a list of it. So Dave's suggestion of once a year is probably very sensible. The second point is, I'd just like to hear from Phil Snell before we commit ourselves, because I have a feeling, in the back of my mind, the council have come and repaired some of those pieces of equipment. It wouldn't hurt to wait for a couple of weeks till Steve has heard from Phil Snell as to what their responsibilities are in that area, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. And the other thing is, Steve, they're obviously ramping this, on the number of inspections and trying to charge on that. And yet they're asking for two unconnected inspection regimes here. So, for example, if we said, well, we just want one inspection a year of fish ponds and one inspection a year of Thrupp Close, which you can do on the same day, I would expect that to be no more than 140 per inspection. I mean, why would it be? That's the price for two inspections, and it's quite a big one, actually. Are there any other suppliers that we can look at?
There might well be.
Have you spoken to Preludic about this? Is this where you got these people from?
These people are Preludic's agents. Preludic actually recommended that. I have to say that given everything else that I've got on, I mean, if somebody could actually find somebody else that we would be prepared to give a quote, I would appreciate the kind of offloading of this to somebody else.
Yeah. I will.
Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, actually, if it's you just mentioned a very good point. If this is the bulk of our equipment, and by the way, we haven't talked about the outdoor gym here.
No, that I was going to come on to say that we haven't talked about the outdoor gym where the equipment probably does need more maintenance than.
Yeah. I think we could probably do with deferring this item if councillors are happy with that. And I think the actions are to talk to Milton Keynes Council about what they do. What were you going to say about the outdoor gym? Have you got anything to say at this stage, Steve?
Not at this stage, Phil.
Yeah. And then depending on what that is, perhaps you could talk to us as a group outside of the next meeting to try and develop a proposal that we can then make a decision on at the next meeting.
Yeah, I think that we'd expect it to be inspection and general maintenance, but not repair. So for example, if anything needed greasing with regard to the outdoor gym, I know that's not there, or anything like that, we'd expect them to do the maintenance bit. But I think you've made a good decision between you.
Yeah. And then once we've got a position, I think we may well ask you to go back and see if we can get a better deal, given we are going to have 3 things done once a year, for example. Yeah. I mean, it might also be worth checking with Preludic what their recommended maintenance schedule would be for lightly used equipment. I mean, that equipment there is not used a huge amount. Anyway.
Okay, that's fine.
Right. Right. The next one is government consultations on new planning rules. This is a very nerdy, but it is quite important. And in fact, there was a note out from BALC today containing some information and very much asking parishes to make sure that they did respond to this. If I just very quickly, share the paper that I did send you after a seminar that Milton Keynes Council ran, and I think we have to actually take our hats off to Milton Keynes Council on this, because it is quite clear that most other councils, certainly Buckinghamshire, and even others, have not provided this sort of information for their parishes. But basically, the whole of planning is going to change really quite radically if this goes through. But there are 2 distinct consultations going on. One is a slightly longer term white paper, and the other is some changes to the current planning system, which I'm just scrolling down to now to show you, which has got a few things which I think might be of interest, or might impact us. And I have had an exchange with James, what's his surname, George, who looks after the planning development. Anyway, at Milton Keynes Council, who's leading on this. I mean, I think they all feel we should be responding. What I've done, and I'm really not going to suggest you'll be pleased to hear that we go through this in great detail, but this is, these are the responses that I suggest. The first one is to the consultation that finishes at the end of this month. So it's a very short time frame. And where I didn't think that we had any comment, I've just put no comment. I mean, for example, they're talking about raising the small site threshold. This would mean that at the moment, if you build a site with 10 or more houses, then you have to start providing affordable homes at 31%. Okay, and for some reason, the government is intending to raise that threshold from 10 to 40 to 50 houses, which I can only think, given that Milton Keynes has actually got a real shortage of affordable housing, is just going to result in, not a lot of affordable housing happening. That's my view. I've also put a comment in there about the loss of S106 or SIL. I've also made a point up there. I mean, they talk about moving to a standard system for an indicative housing requirement. Frankly, I think it's the way they calculate the 5-year housing land supply which frankly seems to be absolutely at the whim of a planning inspector. And you go to different planning appeals and you get different results, and they have horrific consequences, as poor old Hanslope has found out.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's on that paper. And then the white paper, we could actually consider at the next meeting, but to be honest, I would suggest we just deal with it. And this is the one where they're going to divide all land in the country into three classes. It's either going to be, I'll just move back. It's either going to be a growth area where effectively there'll be a master plan agreed, and then basically decisions are just going to be, you will have effectively permission to develop in those growth areas. You just got to comply with certain top level design codes, but then, do as you want. Renewal areas, which are areas which are suitable for development, but typically in villages and things, it's infilling, it's a little bit of gentle expansion, but nothing too much. I think they call it genteel densification, I think is the phrase that they use. And then there are protected areas where building wouldn't normally be permitted at all. And all land would be in one of those three. And they're going to shift the way in which you, the public, and indeed ourselves, would be involved in this. From you've really got to sort everything out up front when these local areas, when these types of land areas are defined together with their design codes. And there's where the public are involved. And then once that's done, the idea is that it zips through all, development control committees and so on, without very much public involvement at all. So it's quite serious, actually. But anyway, that's what I suggested in this one here, where they ask a number of standard questions. And these are the suggestions that I propose. One where I thought you might have different views, which is number 4. I've left in the options that they gave you. But basically, there you are. Does anyone wish to comment on any of this? It's really difficult unless you sort of plow through these very long papers to read them yourself to come to a view. But I have actually done that effectively for the council. Any comments? Are you happy therefore Steve, Dave?
Yeah, sorry, Phil. Yeah, I mean, I've got to be honest. I've only got through about 50% of what you've sent through, but what I've seen, it's absolutely spot on, and I think you're absolutely right that that the changes that they're proposing could be disastrous.
Yeah,
I think
I just need more time to carry on reading it, and I will.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah.
I think actually the changes to permitted development rights as well are going to be probably the worst thing out of this, because it'll just be open season, won't it?
Well, what they're doing is they're amalgamating classes so that I don't know, I can't remember at the moment. If you've got a pub and an Indian restaurant, I think at the moment they're in different classes, for example. And now it's all going to be in the same class, so you'll be able to change from one to the other without having to go for a change of use.
No, I was talking about the fact you could build up to 3. You could build an extra story on a 2-story building.
You can build 2 stories.
2 stories, yeah.
Yeah, you can go up 2 stories. So fortunately, we have defined our buildings of local interest. So did you have ambitions to doing that yourself, Russell?
Ours is a grade 2 listed house, so I can't.
I just thought we haven't an Indian restaurant and we haven't a pub, which must make us classless.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Well, look.
Yeah. Thank you, Phil. That's a good.
Are you okay with this going? And I think we ought to do something. I think it's important that.
Yes.
Well, planning authorities certainly will respond, but I think actually putting a little bit more in would help. Yeah.
I don't think Mr. Cummings is going to like it, though, is he?
Will that upset you, Russell?
No.
I'd say that's a result.
All right. Can I therefore propose that we send in these responses to the consultation? All in favour? Yeah. Thank you. Right. Next one is a bit more down to earth. You know that we have. Whoops, sorry. Oh. Somehow I've just managed to lose. No.
I think, Phil, if you don't mind me saying, there are two bits of information you need here. You need the costs from your chairman's report.
Yeah.
And also the, if you like, the map of the lampposts that we've reviewed, where they are in the village and what state they're in. And I think from that you can form an opinion maybe that some areas are okay to leave, and other areas you might as well, other roads you might as well do a lot. But they're the two bits of information you need to look at in parallel.
Yeah.
To get an overall cost.
Unfortunately, it was the map or the list of street lights that I went to click on it and managed to delete it from the thing I've got set up. But let me just share this one, which is from my report, which gives the costs. So basically, it's about £60 per unit, but there are some possible extras depending on whether I think there are very few where there are trimming vegetation that needs to be doing, but there are one or two. And there are a few on North Street, for example, where there are some signs that will need to be removed. But very broadly, I think we could probably talk about an average of, say, £70 a unit, which, and I think I'm going from memory now. I'll see if I can very quickly find, I'll stop the share and see if I can very quickly find the map that you sent us.
Do you want me to send it through again?
No, I'll be able to get it done. So I hope I will. My apologies for this. I don't know quite what happened there.
Well, Kay, while Phil is doing that, what are our viewing figures?
You're muted, Kay.
I know, because I keep coughing. Didn't really want to cough all over you. We have got 14 people viewing at the moment. It has gone from varied between 9 and 14 being the most, but no comments.
Building up.
Right, you should now be seeing the results of the survey that Steve did.
Yep.
And do you want to give some credit to the lad who helped you do this, Steve? Sorry, I've forgotten his name for the moment.
Yeah, well, it's Tom Ladyman.
Tom Ladyman, of course it is, who was doing a number of jobs around the village as part of his Duke of Edinburgh's. And I think we ought to record our thanks to him for doing this and other jobs.
Yes.
So thank you very much, Tom, for that. And my apologies, I forgot your name briefly. But this is the result of the work that he's done. I haven't added up on your list, Steve, but I think from a previous note that you sent out, there are 43 lampposts that need repainting. Is that correct?
I can't remember, Phil.
Yeah.
That looks about right.
Yeah. So 43, and if we say it's going to be, sake of argument, round about £70 a time, you know, it's going to be about £3,000 for us to repaint them. Now, some of them I think are, as you can see here, they're in very poor condition. You know, some of them have turned green really through whatever has happened to the paint. And we've got some new ones which look really smart. So there's it looks a bit incongruous where you change from the new ones to some of the older ones. Of course, they were replaced at different times. On that basis, it would cost about, as I say, about £3,000. Does anyone want to talk about this? Dave?
I would like to say that the lamppost that the SID is currently on, it's no longer got any algae on it, because it's all over my jacket.
Okay. Well, I think
Phil, can I just ask, because I mean, to me, I can't form a picture of how many of these are going to need to be rubbed down. But given the cost of rubbing down lampposts, that would significantly increase to £3,000.
Mm.
Well, it would.
Have we got plenty in reserves to meet the cost of this?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, we have. Kay?
Can I just ask Dave that when he was leaning on the lamppost, did he have a ukulele with him?
Oh, very good. Oh,
I see the meeting is going on too long, isn't it?
yeah.
Cleaning windows.
Yeah. I mean, I personally thought, I was expecting a horror quotation from Milton Keynes Council on this, particularly when they told us that we weren't allowed to do it ourselves, by ourselves. I meant getting our own contractor, because it was electrical works. And I thought that it was a very reasonable quote that came in, actually. Of course, yes, if they required rubbing down, and some of them might do, then it would put the price up, as you say, significantly. But I mean, we're talking about a number between 3,000, maybe 5,000, or whatever, as it works out.
Yeah, as long as the councillors have got that in mind when they vote.
Yeah,
I'm happy.
I think it would well, basically smarten up, a part of the village where this style of lamppost is clearly, showing its age.
Agreed.
So does anyone wish to speak on this? Okay.
When would this be done? Because wouldn't it be a good idea perhaps to wait until maybe spring next year before the...
Well, I laugh because when you ask Ringway to do something, it will probably, I mean, which year? Are you talking about 2021 or 2022?
Just thinking about the village competition,
Yeah. I mean, I've been waiting for for over a year for them to remove an old bracket next to a street light in North Street, and they promised faith it would be done by the end of August, and indeed they did do it. But when I walked down there, I realised, to my horror, that there's now nothing left on the telegraph pole at all, except holes where they've taken it down. Some of the holes are quite big. So this afternoon, I've written to Naveed to ask her if she'd kindly remove the pole now. That's the one just opposite the triangle. But yeah, I mean, heaven knows is the short answer, Kay, when they would get round to doing it. Well, look, in that case, I will propose that we do this work, because I think, Milton Keynes are not going to do it for us. So I'd like to see the village looking nice, and I think this is an important thing. We spent a lot of money trying to get the centre looking nice. So I'll vote. Anyone else in favour? We are all in favour. Okay, thank you very much.
Phil, do you want me to commission that work to talk to Naveed about it?
Yeah, please, yes. Right. So we now come on to the internal auditor's report, and I'll very quickly share that with everyone. So basically, this is done by Jane Olive, who is our internal auditor, and I think she found a couple of minor instances. One where a company had failed to put their company registration number. The notice board, which Steve advised us about last meeting, where the net cost to us was only £500, I think, or less than £500, and therefore we didn't go out to tender. But actually, it was less than that because we received £2,000 from the insurers and from the landscaping company for knocking over our notice board. And so we didn't feel it had to, but Jane is really saying we should have done that. So we just got to take that on the chin.
Sorry, can I add to that, Phil? There was another criteria, and that was that the notice board itself cost £2,000, which would have been okay, but we then had it fitted. And so I think when we made the decision to actually go with the notice board, we didn't take the cost of fitting into account.
Yeah. It's just a little note for us in the future, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just a little slap on the wrist.
And the contract for grass cutting, we did it with Castlethorpe Parish Council, and Castlethorpe Parish Council took the lead on it and hold the contract. And it's their comment that we should have a copy as well. So I think here's the recommendation and conclusion. And I think Steve's done a good job in making sure that our books are kept in order.
All shucks.
So thanks, Steve, for that, and thank Jane for her work in internally auditing us. And this now goes to the external auditor, but basically they don't do this level of work. It's fairly true.
Everything's off with the external auditors.
I'm sorry?
Everything is with the external auditors now.
Very good. Okay. Is everybody happy with that? Does anyone want to speak to it? No. In that case, let's move on then to financial matters, the RFO schedule. Now, wait a minute. I need to get the right one up here. And Steve, you'll have to tell me.
Yeah, the one that the revised one that I sent round had the wrong reason to give Russell money.
Is this the right one?
It's the right amount that we were giving him, but for the wrong reason. Yeah, that's not, but that's fine. There's only the one small change on it. And the change is that for Russell, it wasn't refund the purchase of the steam cleaner. It was actually a refund of the money paid for keys for the village hall store cupboard. So if you imagine that, that's exactly right. The rest of it.
Is it?
Oh no, it's not.
Shayla's not on there.
And neither is my £80.
I mean, you sent about 3 of these out, Steve.
No, pick the third one, Phil. That's absolutely correct.
That is easier said than done. Wait a minute. Let me. I now have to stop that share. So that one is not the one that we're to look at.
No, that was the first one. I got a late invoice from Brian Shayler, and I thought, well, I might as well include my other unclaimed item in it as well. So I made 2 changes.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, blast. That was it. And I've just closed it now. Oh, let me go back. Yeah.
Dave, that lamppost song, you might as well give us a rendition.
You've got a cheek, Steve. No, wait a minute. That's not the right one. Sent out about. Right, here we go. Let's see if I can share this one now. Right?
Yeah, that's fine.
That's the right one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that is exactly the right one.
Well, there you go. 3rd time lucky, Steve. I mean, I think this is all.
Yeah, I bought a new petrol strimmer. I've paid the court fees for next month's court action. We've got the normal RTM stuff. Greg Flack, I misspelt his name on the check and it's bounced, so we need to reissue that. Simon Bates has done the 3rd wing spray that I meant to put in the clerk's report. Richard has done some stuff. Russell additional keys that he's had cut. rent keeper, we had £60 to Terry, but I didn't realise he was VAT registered, so that's £12 to top that up. The next one's the 2 defibrillators that we all know about. The next one is the retensioning of the cableway, and then the 2 payments for the loft extension, and the usual monthly payments at the bottom.
And I think, Steve, that the defibrillators, we've got a grant to cover that, haven't we?
Yeah, we've had the money for that. We've actually had 3,500, I think. So we might be. So at the moment, I think we might be about £1,000 in pocket on that, and need to consider what to do if we don't pay all the grant, if we don't spend all the money.
Is there maintenance to be paid on it? Because quite often you get a grant that will cover you for the first 5 years of maintenance on these things.
Yeah, I think we need to look at it, Phil, and we need to have that in mind.
Okay.
There's also down a bit a payment of £20,000 to transfer money from Bank of Ireland into Lloyd's, because we need the 50,000 bit there being ready for the transfer over to the CCLA fund.
Yeah.
So that 20,000 is to top up the working Lloyd's account.
Okay. Any questions on this? Okay, I need a proposer and a seconder on it, please. As Kay is proposing, I'll second it then. And all in favour? Russell, are you okay with it?
No, he can't.
Oh, he can't vote because he's
left the meeting.
He's left the meeting. Right, okay.
He's not there. He's coming back now.
Okay. Carried unanimously by them that can do this. Right, the next one then is 8.2, which is the, I'm just going to try and move on agenda.
We're still in part 1, aren't we? The open.
Yeah.
We haven't got a part 2, Kay.
Okay, so this is all open.
It's all
live
open.
streamed.
Yeah.
Just checking.
Right. I'm now going to share again for item 8.2, which is the CLA Property Fund. And this was actually covered in the bottom of the, or attached to the agenda. So we had a presentation that Russell, Steve and I were the only ones that actually could make the meeting. We also had, what's his name? Steve McKay, McNay?
Steve McKenzie,
McNay,
yeah.
Yeah, who's the parish manager at Woughton Community Council, who are a customer of CCLA and have got their investments with them, was also on the call, and he gave some valuable advice as well. But basically, the property fund has been yielding about 4.2% per annum. There is an initial fee of 6 to 7%. So it does wipe out the first year or so of this. Though it is possible, if someone is leaving the fund, to negotiate with them to buy their share in there, but obviously that we don't know if that happens. We were very worried about what's written in the press about going into property, but we did go through this, and I think we felt comfortable that this was all low risk investments. And CCLA is charities, councils and local authorities, so it's it is a fund specifically for us. That's what CCLA is. And there's a number of parish councils in Milton Keynes. I think Only Town Council, Woughton obviously, and I think a couple of others invest in them. As well as the property fund, they also talked to us about a deposit fund, which makes a small interest payment, and you can see all the details are written on there. And we had previously decided that we would move away from Bank of Ireland, who are just too difficult to work with, because change of signatories is really, really hard. Steve can't, as clerk, is not allowed any information directly from them. So, and I think we're down to, because it's so hard to change signatories, I've got a feeling we're down to 2 signatories left now, which
That's
is
right.
Dave Hines and me, which is ridiculous. So, you know, the suggestion is in 8.2 and then going on to 8.3 is that we invest the £50,000, which is the sports ground fund, into the property fund as a long-term investment. Obviously, if it's possible to negotiate with an outgoing participant to save the initial fees, that would be great, and CCLA will tell us that. But in any case, do that, because that will then give us some long-term income, because we've had no income from that at all. It's currently earning 0%. And I would remind everyone that, you know, that bond, well, it's not really a bond, but it was set up as a kind of fund, the interest of which would maintain or largely maintain the sports ground. That's what it was for.
That's correct.
Yeah. So that's 8.2, and 8.3 is that we move our deposit account gradually from the Bank of Ireland. We won't do it. We won't close the Bank of Ireland immediately, because Milton Keynes Council pays the precept in there, and Milton Keynes Council might take a little bit of time to work out what we've done. So we don't want to have the precept bouncing. But once we're comfortable that they're paying into our current account, which is what they'd have to do, they can't pay directly into the CCLA deposit fund. Only we can pay in and draw out. So the idea is that Milton Keynes Council would pay into our current account. We would then do a transfer into the deposit fund twice a year, in April and October, when we get the half-yearly precept payments from MKC, and then we would draw out, for example, as we did today, during the course of the year, to make sure we've got enough funds in our current account to pay for what we need. So I think we may as well treat this as a kind of compound resolution. I'll stop the share and.
Sorry, Phil, can I slightly disagree with you on that? The councillors have to separately understand. This is what CCLA asked us to do, to specifically understand the risk and performance of CCLA Property Fund. So can I ask you to put the resolution separately?
Yeah.
The first one is that the parish council understands.
Yeah, that's fair enough, Steve. So, I mean, effectively, the council's got to take the advice of Russell, Steve, and me, who attended the call, that you know, we were persuaded that this is a proper investment for the parish council to make, and we are recommending to you that we put our £50,000 there. It's a long-term investment. You know, if we drew it out in the next 12 months, we would lose money on it. But in the long term, this should give us a better than basically having it in a deposit account, which are paying somewhere between nothing and 1% at the moment. So can I put that as a resolution then, that we confirm that we wish to invest in there,
and that we understand,
it.
Just before the vote, Chair, when the three of you were present, did anyone get a contrast between the performance of the past year against previous years, when we've been in this COVID downturn climate?
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, they did show graphs of the performance, basically of them versus various averages, and broadly it was. I'm having to do this from memory because I've I haven't got the. Well, I probably could find it fairly quickly if you wanted me to, but it was doing well against its peers.
Yeah,
Russell
I
or
think
Steve, did you want to add to that?
I think the graphs showed that they did outperform the average.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think returns were down, but that's understandable. I mean, I'd be amazed if they weren't.
No, I'm happy with that. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I mean, I would remind everyone that we had previously made a decision to go this route, and then with COVID, the fund was closed because it was regarded as an unsafe investment. And indeed, it is still closed. This won't happen straight away, but they expect there's a kind of confidence level on the investments, and it went below the kind of threshold, so they closed the fund. It's now crept back up because they don't want their clients, who are, as I say, charities, churches and local authorities. That's what CCLA stands for, charities, churches. They don't want those customers put at risk. But they believe that it's going to be reopening in early October. So we thought we'd put the resolution here that when the fund opens, we'd make that investment. So I now ask again for the support of the council in making that investment.
And in understanding the risks in doing so.
Thank you. That's unanimous. And then moving.
Sorry, Phil, I really needed a seconder for that as well.
Seconder, yeah.
No, I'll second it.
Yes, you do. It's financial. And then 8.3 is the deposit fund, that we use this as our deposit fund and gradually move away from the Bank of Ireland as soon as we're comfortable that Milton Keynes Council is doing that. Again, I need a seconder, as Steve would tell me if I'd forgotten. So I'll propose Russell is seconding. All in favour? Yeah, unanimous. Right. So that was unanimous, Steve.
Yep.
I proposed, Russell seconded.
Yep.
8.4, status of the S106 drawdown funds from MKC. I think we've already discussed this. It was approved at Milton Keynes have put various new authorising bodies in place because of the impact on cash during COVID, and it was approved at that meeting on the 26th of August. So the S106 should be winging our way. Did you want to add anything more to that, Steve?
No, I think we've talked that one through, Phil.
8.5 is about getting you some support on financial work. Steve, would you like to give us an update?
I think it's already covered in the clerk's report, Phil. I went to Wolverton to see if they got any spare capacity. They hadn't. And then I went to Stony Stratford. I talked to the town clerk there. She's going to take it to Finance Committee. I was sort of hopeful that she might get back to me before this meeting, but she hasn't. So we'll have to carry that forward to next. But I'm essentially asking to outsource the raising of village hall invoices, the checking for payment, the issuing of second reminders, and the reporting of bad debt. And the town clerk at Stony Stratford has gone away to see A, would they be comfortable in taking that on for us, and B, how much they would charge in doing so.
Yeah, and I think it's obviously it wasn't an issue during the COVID close down, but as Russell has already reported, the village hall is now starting to open up. So it obviously would be helpful to get that support for you. And to stress particularly to residents who might be watching, this separates out the booking clerk responsibilities that Russell has spoken about, which is literally just to do the booking, and all the financial administration, which the clerk has previously done, but this is what we're looking to get a bit of extra support because it is quite onerous doing that. So the booking clerk is literally just taking the bookings, and I think Russell showing people around if they're interested in looking at the hall.
And yes, and giving them the brochure and everything.
Yeah. So please, if anyone is prepared to do that for us, you know, we're all volunteers here, and we could just do with someone else volunteering to help do that job. Right, well, we'll look forward to some more news on that at the next meeting. Moving on to correspondence. Have you received any further correspondence, Steve?
No, Phil.
Yeah, I've received one today actually from a resident who thanked us very much for having the zip wire sorted out. Oh, and could I ask, Dave, were we being you, trained up in tensioning the zip wire for future in the future?
John's the man.
John is.
John
Richard.
is, yeah. No, seriously, it's pretty straightforward. I think the only thing we need to buy is some kind of metal bar. The whole thing's just on a ratchet system, which is, I mean, it needs a bit of force, but it's easy to do. And they reckon it only needs doing once a year, if that, really.
Yes.
As long as John stays off it.
Okay.
Yes.
And who was trained? It was you, John, and Richard, was it?
Richard as
Richard,
well, yeah.
Richard, wasn't it? Very good. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
I was there, but
Sorry, Steve.
so the resident thanked us for sorting out the zip wire. Did draw attention to the tree, which we touched on earlier in the meeting. And I guess what we've got to do now is to persuade Milton Keynes Council to remove that tree, because it is, after all, a play area. It also, around the base, was the tree lounger. I mean, as it turned out, I thought it was in a rotten place, because I never ever saw anybody lounging on it. But should we now look to relocating that, perhaps inside the fish ponds area? I mean,
That would have my support, Chair. I have to say, it in the fish ponds area, that was the least used facility by a distance.
yeah.
I think in terms of what they've left, the council have cut down the tree plus the part of the tree that was left, which they deemed to be a potential casualty later this year. So they took the action there and did it. They have left it neatly stacked. And like yourself, I thought perhaps they were leaving that for people to go and help themselves to logs if they wanted to.
Well, I'm sure there'd be
bench have some seating in the actual play area rather than sort of the other side where you can't see anything into the play area.
Yeah. I mean, I would suggest, was that was from Paludic as well, wasn't it, Steve? Was the bench from Paludic, or?
I can't picture what you mean by a tree lounger. I don't understand.
Basically, it looks like a ranch fence, but sort of low and in such a way that you can put your bottom and your back onto logs, and and sit on it really. And it's meant to be for use to lounge on. Anyway, it's there. My suggestion would be that it just literally goes over the hump onto the other side, so that it's well away from the play equipment at one end, because these are for youths to sit on, and they probably don't want children who are playing on the play equipment running around their feet. And on the opposite side from the zip wire, because again, we don't really want people sort of lounging around when there are people going up and down on the zip wire. So I'd have thought just literally going over the hump onto the other side would be a good place.
That would make sense.
Yeah,
it would make sense, Chair, but I personally think that is a particularly uncomfortable piece of equipment for people to sit on. It's like sitting on a log.
It is a log, John.
Yeah, and with the back as well. The fact is the least used. I mean, it was put there in that design virtually to go around the oak tree, to make a feature of it. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see if it is used anymore when it is inside the fish ponds area.
It is very uncomfortable.
It is. I'm not sure people will use it. But let's do it. And if it fails to be used in any way, we might need to reconsider it.
Hold on, can I just ask? I mean, I have no idea what you're talking about. I can't get this in my mind's eye. But assuming that somebody's got to do it, is there going to be a cost to it, or is that something that a few jolly boys
to move it? I mean, you could ask Richard Wantner, actually, if he would have a look at it and just see if it's something that he could easily move, or it might have to be a bigger job than Richard is. I see Dave is shaking it.
It's about 4 or 5 people would need to move that if you're talking about people moving it. It's a big unit.
I would rather do this as a resolution. I know we can't do it till next meeting, but I would rather do this as a resolution.
All right.
Sorry, just out of interest, this is just a little bit off piece. What do we know what type of tree it was that came down?
I thought it was an oak tree.
No, I don't think it was.
No,
oak.
it wouldn't be oak.
I think it was.
I'd heard sycamore.
Sorry, sycamore, did you say?
I'd heard sycamore. Yeah.
I think Christine said she thought it was a sycamore.
Yeah.
I'll go over and check the leaves tomorrow if you want.
Well, they're probably a bit curled up now. But...
Fine. No, they're not. That's all right, Phil. I'll get the leaves and fire an email to you all.
Yeah.
Yeah. And test out the log bench as well, John.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Put some cushions on the log bench.
Yeah. I think the immediate action is for us to try and get the logs cleared away. I don't know who, with Milton Keynes Council. I think you reported it, didn't you, Dave, that the tree had come down?
I did.
Have they sent you a job finished notice yet?
Yeah, I've had that.
Well, could you possibly reply and say the logs are still there?
Yeah, I'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah, that would be appreciated. And we'll try and get the logs moved. And then, as Steve says, next time we'll get a resolution on the lounger. But the other point that this resident was raising was, would we replace the tree? And I do wonder whether, that would be something that we could do, or even again talk to Milton Keynes Council about whether that's something. Kay, do you want to speak?
How about we have a little tree planting and let the family it nearly fell on have sort of like the honour of putting the tree in place or something like that?
Well, it was a dog, I think, that nearly got.
Well, the family was there. The little girls were playing there with their mum. So
were they? Was that
at least it'll be watered.
Yeah.
So.
Well, look. I mean, before we get into that, I mean, would we broadly support putting another tree in? I mean,
Definitely.
I think a tree would be nice. I'm not quite sure that I'd be. Where that one was, is relatively close, as is its neighbour, to the house. I mean, or the garden of the house.
Move the house.
Yeah, definitely.
Move the house.
I mean, I don't know whether it would be, excuse me, whether it would be better to look, putting a tree in at the far end. Perhaps we could have a look. Well, perhaps Dave and John, you could sort of, as the local councillors, could just sort of.
I know exactly where it is, Phil, and we should put another tree in there.
What exactly where it is?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because we'll all be dead and gone by the time it becomes a problem.
Well, do you want to put a combined proposal to the next meeting? Because this is making decisions. If you put in trees in.
Yeah, no. I just wanted to raise this under correspondence, Steve. I
would have thought if that massive tree, if their roots hadn't interrupted anybody's garden, then a new tree is not going to do any harm whatsoever.
I mean, you won't be able to put a tree in exactly there anyway. It will have to be some distance away. But okay.
So I think action here for Dave and John to actually get something to propose to the next meeting about the so-called tree lounger and the tree.
Yeah,
very happy to do that, Dave.
Yeah,
you have that. Because I'd also like to ask the question: if we are considering putting another tree in there, what treatment the stumps are going to have for the tree that's been removed? Because that will need to be rotted in, as they say.
Well, I think absolutely, and I think this is why I'd like, Dave or yourself to respond to Milton Keynes Council.
Yeah, I'll raise it tomorrow.
And find out just exactly what's happening to complete the work, because I don't think it's acceptable just to leave it as it is.
No.
Right. If there's nothing else, any other business?
Okay.
Can I ask that we set up a drive, Google Drive or something, for all the documents, and you just send us a link to them. So Steve puts all the documents, instead of emailing them out all separately, you actually put them on a Google Drive so we can just access them that way, so they're all in the same place, and I don't have to go through about loads and loads of emails to actually find all the documents.
Well, all the documents I mean, we can do that, and there's no problem. All the documents are in your calendar invitation for this event. So if you
Okay,
look at,
that's fine then.
yeah,
So I just want them in one place instead of
yeah,
having
they
to
are
stick
all there. The
them
only
in
thing that
emails.
wasn't there was the RFO. Well, the original RFO one was.
Yeah.
I think may even have been the second one was, but the third one wasn't.
Okay,
But
and
yeah, they are all attached.
can I say that parking is becoming a real problem on South Street? New Road have no parking. They all park up here. Some of them, obviously not their fault, have 3 vehicles. Some of those are industrial vehicles. We've got vans, we've got pickups, and so there is no parking for residents of South Street sometimes. And as I said, not New Road's problem, not their fault. They've got parked somewhere, but it is becoming a real issue. There's people parking on the corner of where the flats are, which is actually quite dangerous because you have to veer out into the middle of the road on a blind corner, and it's because there's nowhere to park. And
well,
I don't know what the solution is, but it is becoming a problem.
Yeah, I mean, this is tied in with the first point that I made in to do with Maltings Field, because they're spilling, you know, along that stretch. I mean, it's very difficult to know, isn't it? I mean, I don't think we can easily find additional parking spaces for people.
No,
And those houses don't have parking because of the way they were designed. And, you know, people are coming along. I think we're seeing it in a number of other places. I mean, we've seen it in Thrupp Close, where there are 1 or 2 people who've come in with, you know, more than 2 cars per family. And it does make it very difficult.
The problem with South Street and New Road, though, is that a lot of people don't have any parking.
Yeah.
And of course, and then you've got we've got businesses over the road whose staff park on South Street. Again, not their fault because they have to park somewhere. We've got minibuses and just all sorts of things parked, and it is becoming a real problem. And I don't know whether there's anywhere that we could designate as a parking area for people because I think it's becoming quite dangerous in places. That's all. That's what worries me.
I mean, this is exactly the problem that I've been, you know, was talking to the PCSO about is what else we could do. I mean, if anyone has got some ideas about how we might address this, then I'm sure Parish Council would like to consider it. But I honestly, I can't see how we can do this at the moment.
What about, you know, where Maltings 2 is?
Yeah.
The piece of land across from that nothing ever happens to. Could that be made into parking for villagers?
Well, first of all, do remember there's no vehicular access from Maltings Field into that area.
But there's pedestrian access. Oh, yeah, but obviously we don't want to have loads of cars going through. Yeah. Yeah, it's a difficult one. I get that.
Yeah. I mean, it's and that piece of land has been designated for housing. I mean, and I, as far as I could gather from the discussions we had with Stonewater, they actually ran into some problems with Carrington Estates. There was some kind of covenant on the land, and they eventually decided it was too hard to try and overcome the covenant, and that's why they left it without building on it, which is why they've got a much higher density on the main field. Anyway,
Station Yard would be the. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, if Kay or anyone's got any more ideas, you know, by all means, let's try and develop them and perhaps bring a proposal.
Or any villagers have any ideas? Because
well, Station Yard would fit the bill totally, and I'm sure if you ask Simon, he'll give us the ground.
Yeah, right. We've got
the irony in
all you have to do is out the Network Rail.
The Network Rail vans, when they come, they never use Station Yard, so you know, sitting there empty. There was parking South Street.
Yeah, true.
Okay. Any other business? Oh, George. Hello, George. You're muted.
You're muted,
Right.
George.
Have you picked up on the review of the conservation area?
we were told by Martin Ellison that he was planning to publish something round about now, well, September. We did, before your time, George, a number of us, I think Russell was one of them, one of us, I was one of us, John, I think you came on part of it as well, did walk the village with Martin Ellison and agreed changes to the boundary of the conservation area. It was written up, I wrote it all up at the time, but it's just gone into a bit of a black hole. So I hope that what he proposes is not going to be different to what we agreed. Probably.
How long ago did that happen?
I'd have to look it up, actually.
Are we talking days, weeks, months, or years?
No,
I talked to Martin Ellison about a month ago, George, or maybe a little bit more, and he said that he was intending to publish something soon. So I referred him to the late version of the neighbourhood plans, told him there's a lot of good stuff in there, and he said he'd come back to me when he'd had a look at it, and I've not heard from him since.
I have, and you should have had something, because he sent something out on the 28th of August.
Did he?
Saying that he was going to circulate parish clocks on Wednesday, which should have been this Wednesday just gone. There's a new map come out. I don't know if you can see that on there, but there's a pink line, which is a pink shade, which is the existing area, and a pink dotted line, which is a proposed new area. So it's not a lot of difference.
Okay. Maybe you sent it to my old email account. I'll have a check, and if there's anything of immediate interest or import, I'll circulate it.
Yeah, it's going to go to.
I can tell you from just looking at that that's not what we agreed.
Right.
And the bit that I can, reason I can see is that if you look at what is the top right-hand corner, which I think is Bullington End Road, he suggested that the conservation area went up to and included all the Edwardian houses in that row. So it's just not the one actually on the entrance to Thrupp Close, but all the others in that row were included in it.
Anyway, this should be coming out. It should be being sent to you. As I said, I thought it was going to be sent to you last week, because that's what he said in his email.
It might have gone to my old account, George. I haven't checked that for a couple of days.
But it's going to be up for consultation in November. So you'll have October to talk about it.
Oh dear, honestly, he's wasted. I think it was February or March of 2019 that he came round, and we've waited all this time, and now he's put something out that is not what we agreed with him. I mean, that is just disgraceful, actually. That really is. And it's going to mean more work for the rest of us, because we're now going to have to try and undo this and to go back to what we had before. And he couldn't be bothered to get it done in time for the neighbourhood plan, because we specifically asked him to do that so we could incorporate the changes to the conservation area boundary in the neighbourhood plan, and he wouldn't do that. And that was only a couple of months ago. And now it comes out and it's wrong.
Steve, I've just forwarded that to you.
Thanks, George. I'll circulate. Right. I'll circulate that.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay. Well, anything else from anyone? In that case, I think we can finish the meeting. So thank you all, and thank you to any residents who had the perseverance to stay with us throughout. And I hope you found it informative. So we'll now end the live streams. Goodbye. The next meeting is on the 5th of October, and it will be done in the same way, and a notification as to how to access it will be sent out by Steve in the preceding week, certainly by the Wednesday before, as we're required to do. Okay, so good night.
Good night, all.